Welcome to another round of coffee and donuts. If you don't know who I am, I'm Frank Magaha. I'm a former federal law enforcement officer, now a full-time law enforcement instructor. And today we go over all the questions that you all have for me. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So what we have here is a series of questions that you all ask, and I try to answer as best as possible. Let's discuss. Okay, let's dive in. First question. I had my oral panel, was told that they'd contact in 2 to 3 days. Haven't heard anything back. It's been 5 days. It's a small department with 18 officers. They're rarely hiring, but have one opening at the moment. What do you think? There's a few parts of this. First and foremost, if this is your only department that you're applying to, I would recommend identifying two more to apply to. And the reason for that is if they only have one position available, they've probably had hundreds of applicants apply for that. And not that you're not the best applicant. I'm not saying that, and maybe you are. But at the same point in time, statistically, the odds aren't in your favor, right? So if this is your dream department, yeah, apply to them if they have an opening. But don't put your career on hold just because this is the only department that you want to work for. No, one thing I always recommend, and a lot of officers do this, I think statistically, and don't quote me on this, but last I heard is the average police officer works at about three different departments before they retire. And that's actually a really good thing because you get different perspectives, different training. A lot of times when you go to from one department to another, they say, hey, before you try to bring anything from your old department, and remember, there's probably a reason you left your old department, right? Whether you needed to move for family, whether you didn't like something about that department, it doesn't matter. Uh, but ultimately, before you try to bring in stuff from your old department, learn that department first, and then use your knowledge and experience to help it grow. But going back to this question, there would be nothing wrong with starting at another department if this department didn't pick you up and then lateraling over to them later on. And that's just a recommendation because you could spend 5 years waiting for this department to open back up and then them only have one more billet and you still not get selected for it. So that's why I always ask people, is this, do you want to be an ABC police department or do you want to be a law enforcement officer? And if the answer is a law enforcement officer, then I recommend going out, getting hired, starting your career, and getting as much experience. And then, if you want to move over to a different department later on, that's what I would do. As for not hearing back from them, we say all the time, hey, it'll be 2 to 3 days, I think. Then it's five, then it's a month, it's 4 weeks. We have the policy over here at Armageddon that if we have zero contact, which means they haven't contacted us, they haven't contacted our references, we haven't gotten an email after 4 weeks, then we'll send a professional follow-up email that we've drafted templates for. So that's where we're at. Um, okay, next question. I was indefinitely disqualified after assuming failing the polygraph tests at the first department I applied for. They really didn't say in the email I'm applying for another department. Does it hurt my chances? Yes and no. The big thing that I have here with this is the indefinite disqualification and the reason why. If the last thing you did was the polygraph, a lot of times just failing the polygraph is not a permanent disqualification. Now, every department's different. Maybe that is what it could be, but a lot of times a permanent disqualification, right, a permanent DQ is due to something in your background. So I'd be more inclined to figure out what that is, right? Or to try and analyze something. Maybe it's not. I'm not saying I don't want you, you know, going down a rabbit hole here looking, but that's what I normally see, just failing the polygraph. She was like, hey, unfortunately, you didn't pass. Please reapply in a year or two, or you're eligible to reapply in a year or two. You get a temporary disqualification. Permanent DQ, there's something there that they're saying no matter what happens, you're never a fit for this department, right? Now, that's not saying that another department won't pick you up. And it's not saying that a lot of times permanent DQs is from someone misarticulating a fact, right? It's not even that they have a permanent DQ. It's just they just misarticulated themselves. That made it sound like a permanent DQ, and the department's like, I don't want to touch this. I don't even want to know. I don't have time for this. We have too many candidates to filter through. So that's that aspect. But yeah, I'd look into that. Um, as for hurting you, a permanent DQ, they're going to want to know why. They're going to want to know why. And you might not know. Maybe the next department might tell you. You might get lucky on that aspect. Sometimes it's better to be ignorant to the fact because, if the first department that permanently DQ'd you on an error, you don't want to have to keep bringing up that error over and over. But yeah, I would do some self-reflection, see if you know what it is, see if it's something that will be this way with every department, but it is going to be another hurdle you're going to have to articulate. Once again, depending on what it is, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. We've assisted many law enforcement careers after one department permanently DQ'd them from their department. Some departments just have a one and done style, and then they're like, hey, you're permanently DQ'd. LAPD constantly hearing, hey, you get two chances. Doesn't matter what they are, two chances ever to apply to LAPD. After that, you're ineligible to apply ever again. So, I mean, it could be something along those lines as well. All right, last question. On the application I'm filling out, it asks if it's okay to contact an employer. Pretty typical. As I haven't told anyone that I'm looking at a career change at my current employer, is it okay to ask them not to contact my current employer? Yeah, it is. Now, understand some background investigators can't account for human error. You're going to hear me say this all the time. Some investigators might not like that, and they might ask you, hey, why? And you would just tell them, hey, I haven't notified my employer yet. I feel that it would not be appreciated, right? I don't think they'd appreciate knowing. And then you can even, if you have firsthand knowledge, I've seen they treat employees different after they've advised that they're looking for a new employment or that they're on their 2 weeks notice or whatever it is. So I would just like to mitigate that as much as possible until it's more likely that the department is looking to pick me up. And I think that's perfectly fine and perfectly reasonable as long as you display it professionally along those lines. I mean, that would work. You might want to polish that up a little bit, but that's the way I would go with it. But perfectly accessible. I don't know if everyone will interpret it properly, but absolutely acceptable, right? Absolutely. Uh, Yeah, I would I would just say, hey, I respectfully prefer you didn't contact my current employer until after, a conditional or final offer. Well, conditional offer would be made. Um, yeah, that way at least you have some type of likelihood to move forward. They don't have to follow it depending on your state and depending on the department, but it is usually they're pretty respectful of it. And we understand, you have to understand law enforcement recruiters and investigators and hiring officials, we've been doing this for a long time, right? We get it. We're not trying to ruin anyone's life, right? But at the same point in time, we just want to make sure no one's lying to us. So that's the big thing. Uh, other than that, yeah, no, I think you'll be fine with saying that. And if there's any issues with it, that's probably just not the right department for you. Okay, I hope this helps. Listen, we go on to YouTube and answer every question that is asked. So leave a question there. Additionally, we have a new blog out, and that blog has two components, two categories. One is department reviews, right? So you can log in. We've integrated a comment and a voting system in there. So you can go in there and let us know, hey, can you do a review on this department? And then you can review it yourself and then read everyone else's review of what the hiring process is like for that department or what they feel about working with that department. Additionally, we answer every comment that's written on any of our blog posts. We answer 100% of those. So if you're looking for a timely response to a question about a blog or about anything you have, you can message us over there on the blog. And that's at the bottom of our homepage on our website, armaganct.com, ARMOGANCT.com. Hope this helps. Stay safe, and I will see you next time.